Well, hello, everybody. Hello here and online. It's so nice to see all of you. And of course, it's a very special to have my dad here. And when we brought up the idea, yeah, I see there are a lot of familiar faces, of course, and I know some people from Legacy Solel know my parents from our trip to Israel. It's 9 years ago. It's hard to believe. Yeah, 2013. But many of you don't. And so my dad, who's going to speak, he's a retired psychiatrist. And I'm one of the few normal children of psychiatrists, just so you know. And my sister too, who's here. But he is really a prolific writer. He's written his whole career, but lately, since retirement, has written more. And his real specialties were psychiatry for different cultures, as well as ethics in how you run a managed care psychiatric clinics. He worked with patients, he worked with counties, he did public psychiatry, did just a variety of different areas of life. And right now, when we have Thanksgiving coming up, we all look forward to Thanksgiving, of course. We look forward to being with family and friends and eating. But if you think about it, we are in a time of such division and tension in our country, both politically, socially, economically. It's a difficult time, and sometimes Thanksgiving can be difficult for people. It can be difficult managing disagreements. It can be difficult if there are family issues, as one thing you learn as a rabbi, and I'm sure as a psychiatrist, is that there are no totally normal families. Every family has issues. That's the nature of life. That's the nature of being human beings. And sometimes managing, working through those tensions is difficult, and Thanksgiving can bring some of those out. So my dad's going to talk a little bit about how we can go through Thanksgiving and be both authentic, who we are, and psychologically wise. So it is my great honor to introduce my dad, Dr. Steve Moffic.
Thank you, son and Rabbi and Evan. I'm going to only stay up here for a minute now because I want to introduce a surprise guest. First, I want to say, though, I think he's on the line. Ed, our heart is with you, and I'm sorry you can't be here for good reason. So why I'm only going to stay for a minute is that every week I do a short video for Psychiatric Times, maybe 5 minutes, on society and psychiatry, which fits the topic for today, right? Now, every other week, at least, there's an introduction with a song excerpt that relates to the title. So we're going to do that today, live. And guess who's going to do that? My wife, Rusty, Evan's mom, and Stacy's mom. She's the surprise secret guest here. So, Rusty.
Taking stock of why I haven't. What do I find? The things that I will have will keep me satisfied. Checking out about what I have and what I haven't. What do I find? A healthy balance on the credit side. I got no diamonds, I got no pearls. Still think I'm alone at night. Got a mansion, got no yacht. Still I'm happy with what I got. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. Sunshine gives me a lovely day. Moonlight is the Milky Way. Got no checkbooks, got no banks. Still, I'd like to express my thanks. I got sun in the morning and the moon at night. And with the sun in the morning and the moon in the evening, I'm all right.
Okay, so we can stop now, right? You've heard essence of what I want to say and said much better, and she always steals the show. So yeah, we got them. So by the way, just happen, feel free to interrupt me anytime. You know, if a question comes up or a comment or desire, just talk up and we'll stop and address that. So I want to say the formal thank yous now. Certainly to Evan for the introduction and being such a son that we're proud of. And, you know, it's really a blessing that Rusty and I get to see him in action. It doesn't happen very often that a parent can see their son in action and be so proud of it, or daughter. We don't see Stacy in action as much, but we could. She's in the same sort of helping profession. She works at John Marshall Law School at the University of Illinois now. This is her right over there. Career counseling and administration for law students. So we have lots of pride in both of them. I want to also thank everybody who came here, but also Solel in general, not just because Evan's here, but you know, people sometimes get a second home, personal home to buy. Well, we've got a second synagogue. We do have our own synagogue in Milwaukee, but this feels like our second home, and I think we feel almost as happy and welcome here as in our own synagogues. So for that, well, that's just who I was going to thank, because Rabbi I came out of our synagogue in Shalom when Evan was younger, and so we already knew him before he came to Lakeside. And look at this arrangement that's occurred, which when I tell people you are the envy of any synagogue I tell that to, that you had a merger that worked and support each other.
Trying to get the time for people who are
Tired? Is that good? Okay. Thank you. So the last thanks, which is probably the most important today, is Vanessa. So, you know, Vanessa called, I don't know, some months ago and said, you know, we'd like you to come to Solel. I've been before, maybe 8 years ago, talked about psychiatric interpretation. It's exactly.
I mean, I'm from the Lakeside, so you can say Lakeside if you want, but.
Lakeside,
Macomb.
Macomb, whatever. So I spoke about the characters in the story in the Torah and sort of interpret them psychiatrically. And then Evan and I did a series during COVID on Ecclesiastic, right? Yeah. Actually, what I would name today is COVID Relief Thanksgiving. This is a really special Thanksgiving because COVID seems to be pulling back. And I think when we're talking about what Vanessa said to talk about, it fits perfect. So she asked me what I would like to talk about, and I threw out a couple of examples, like elderly, growing up or growing older Jewishly, death and dying, whatever. She said, well, it's close to Thanksgiving, a time I have available. Why don't you talk about anxiety and or gratefulness? So actually wasn't all that enthused about it, but I said, fine.
I'm being enthused. The people on Zoom are having a hard time. I'm gonna take their computer and you'll take this one.
Oh,
Make sure they can see you.
different.
Yeah.
I want to tell you, is that okay?
Yeah, that's me. Then I have to put, this is gonna take me a hot minute.
Okay.
I have to put you back up, right in here, then I gotta put this. Oh, your thing was on this. Can you mute this?
I think it's muted.
I have to get back to the Zoom. Okay. Wait. They can still hear me. You got it totally muted. Okay. And where? Let's do this.
I don't know why that.
So there we are. Let's unmute him.
Drop the audio from this.
Yeah. Okay.
It's okay. So, you know, a psychiatrist normally would interpret what just happened, but I won't. But I was just about to get to praising Vanessa for picking this topic because as I thought about it, it seemed more and more relevant that the two big emotions that go on with Thanksgiving are anxiety and gratefulness. They're all almost opposites, but they sort of intertwine with each other. And this image came to my mind of two DNA psychological strands, kind of encircling one another up and down. So I think it was a brilliant idea, Vanessa, and it really, really helped me to kind of focus on this. So just a little bit on then gratefulness and anxiety. So, I mean, gratefulness is one of our great emotions. Some people call it a superpower, that you feel appreciative for what you have. And so in the song that Rusty sang, excerpt from Annie Get Your Gun, at that point in the play, I think she was kind of down and out. Nothing was going well in her relationships and so forth, but she still could conclude that she still had something valuable, seeing the sun and moon, which we often take for granted, right? One of the drawbacks of gratitude is that we just get used to things, which is why getting out of this COVID time is so important, because we can have a better sense of what we missed and what we should be grateful about. But you just take it for granted. Now, there's data that actually being a study of nuns 60 years ago indicated that those who were more grateful 60 years ago and continued live 7 years longer on the average than nuns who don't. And they had the similar living conditions and so forth. So you can live longer. It's probably the biggest contributor to happiness after genetics. So it's really important there. And it has anti-anxiety aspects. Now, gratefulness it's just not, you just can't say, I'm grateful, and you're right in tune with what's going on. There could be too little gratefulness, and that's common. You're just taking things for granted. There could be too much gratitude, right? You're grateful for everything, and then you sort of forget what's wrong and needs to be addressed, or you find the sweet spot, sort of like Goldilocks in the story of getting the cereal, the porridge, too hot, too cold, and just right. So you want to get this just right. Be grateful, but also don't forget what needs to be improved that you can't quite appreciate yet. And the same thing I think is true with anxiety. Anxiety is anticipating that something is probably going to go wrong or may go wrong. And it's usually viewed as a negative emotion. It's not. We need anxiety, the right amount of anxiety to do what we need to do in life. Too little anxiety, like if you're not anxious for a test that you haven't studied for, you're not going to do too well. And then too much anxiety kind of inhibits you in all sorts of ways. So there too, a sweet spot. And speaking of COVID, we can apply anxiety there. This is not political at all, but you know, too little anxiety in COVID might be for the reason that you're not anxious enough about how sick you could get or could have got. Down low. Too high, you know, you do everything that's required. You get your shots, your booster shots, you wear the mask all the time, but you don't even start going out when you have the opportunity, when it's safer. And then there's a sweet spot there. You get what you need to ward off illness, but it doesn't consume your whole life, and you could still enjoy what's possible. So there's these sweet spots with both anxiety and gratefulness. A little on history. of Thanksgiving because I think we can see this kind of spiraling genetic psychological strands. And probably most everybody knows when supposedly the first Thanksgiving happened, right? It's like 1621. And we really don't know what happened. And why don't we really know what happened? Because as I understand it, although my son's a historian, so he could correct me, as I understand it, the history was written by two pilgrims, but nobody from the Indian side. Wampanoag tribe, I think it was. And so there was about supposedly 50 pilgrims and some number of Indians, and the Indians brought food and so forth. And it was supposed to be kind of hunky-dory, right? It probably really wasn't hunky-dory, and it certainly wasn't after that time because the Indians became a target of expulsion and decimation and so forth. And by the way, just as an aside, from my social justice point of view in psychiatry, Native Americans, the indigenous, are the most discriminated group in the country right now by far, much more than Black Americans. There's no, making comparisons is stupid, but they're the most discriminated against. Their mental health is horrendous, so is their physical health. And that started way back when. So, I may be wrong here, but it sort of troubles me that Reform Judaism hasn't paid much attention to the Native Americans and indigenous. So if you all need another new project, then there it is.
Wrote the land thing for our congregation.
And,
Yeah.
and we have a speaker in December on Tikkun Olam Shabbat. So we are there.
Woohoo! Fantastic. Are you talking about the land statement when you say you're on such land?
We're going to use it the first time today in our interfaith Thanksgiving.
Oh, can I tell you I don't like that?
We can talk after.
Whenever I hear that, I sort of think to myself, well, give the land back then, if you're really concerned. So, but yeah, it's a step in the right direction. So we kind of go up in history to George Washington time, and I think twice in 1777 and 1789, he declared this is a Thanksgiving Day, but he didn't make it an official holiday. So when and who made it an official holiday? Who? Yes, and when? Yeah, you're right. And the date is really important because it was in 1863, October. So you're still in the middle of the Civil War then, right? Civil War doesn't end till 2 years later. So he's giving the speech about gratitude for what we have and making Thanksgiving a national holiday when we're in the midst of the Civil War. So in a way, optimistic, positive psychology, but there was so much anxiety going on at that time about the war effort and so forth. I think it came right after the Gettysburg Battle. So it was sort of a good time in that way. You could sort of play on that. So that was the official announcement. Now, there really was, back to the Native Americans, there really was another war of sorts going on at the same time. So if you go out west in the country, there was an endeavor to displace Indians, even though they were already displaced to the west. So you get to Arizona and the Navajo, there was this, there was already an Indian Removal Act in 1830, which gave permission to the government to displace Indians from everywhere. Well, in 1864, I think in January, not long after Lincoln made that holiday designation, there was a land drive, land walk it was called, that took the Navajos out of their lands in northeast Arizona and marched 450 miles to New Mexico, to much poorer lands. And it took a long time. People died along the way, and there were others like that Trail of Tears, but in essence, there was a battle still going out west that was ignored. Of course, the Southern troops were getting out to that area too, but it was really the Union Army that did this kind of stuff. So, just another example that the Indians were separate from the rest of the country, put on reservations, of course, and up to today, again, they have poor mental health, et cetera, going on. So when you think about celebrating Thanksgiving, probably most everybody likes the holiday. It has such wonderful aspects to it. A country saying they are grateful for existing and flourishing, families feeling this is a way to bring together families again. But the one group that doesn't feel that way, generally speaking, about Thanksgiving is Native Americans. And for instance, there's a group of tribes out in the Northeast, I think they're called the United Tribes of the Northeast. They have designated Friday after Thanksgiving as a day of mourning. And why a day of mourning? Because of what's happened to their people over time. So, it's viewed much differently, not by all Indians. When we talk about Indians, there's 500 some tribes. So it's bad to make general comments, but these are the Indians from the Northeast especially. So again, they're in a different situation now. So as far as Jews are concerned, and Ike or Evans may be gone, if we would like to expound on the meaning of Thanksgiving for Jews, we can do more of that, but that's not my area. It's just a couple of things strike me about it, that peace in the family is so important for Jews, and so families getting together now, right? And then we've had our periods of time of not being too grateful too, right? When we left Egypt to go to Israel, people were complaining all the time, and life was better in Egypt and so forth. So we've had to deal with not being grateful at certain times also. I found it interesting from the Jewish standpoint that last week, we go to Torah study at our synagogue in Milwaukee, was when Abraham, right after he was circumcised, went out to greet 3 strangers, which I guess maybe were angels or designates of God, runs out after circumscribed and tries to provide for them with food and so forth, just great hospitality and grateful for their presence. And lo and behold, that not long after that, his elderly wife becomes pregnant and so forth. But that was, to me, kind of a setup for thinking about Thanksgiving. Evan also wrote about refuge cities maybe a week ago. And in a way, our families should be our refuge. They aren't always, but they should be a refuge. So there's places besides a refuge city that we should be able to go to. And so lastly, some psychologists think that anxiety about Thanksgiving can be so intense that we should have what they call an American Thanksgiving anxiety disorder designation. So that it actually be a psychiatric diagnosis, right? It's not in the official diagnosis classification, but kind of a special variety of anxiety because it affects so many people, ranging from the people who cook the meals to coming there, to people who come and they're anxious because they have special issues. Like, can you imagine people with eating disorders coming to Thanksgiving meals? I mean, how difficult that is. Or if you feel you're the black sheep in the family, or blended families, there's even beyond normal families, quotes, getting together. It's a difficult time. So I tried to come up with this acronym about how people might come into Thanksgiving later in the week. And it's called cheerful. And so each of the letters is supposed to stand for something. And we'll see how good my memory is, what these letters are supposed to represent. So the C in cheerful is supposed to represent caring, that we should really come into this caring for the people who come, no matter what. H is for humility. And we shouldn't act like we're the ones who know how Thanksgiving should run and people should interact. We should be empathetic. One of the E's, be empathetic. Another E, engagement. So to try to engage everybody who comes to the meal. R, respect. So if somehow political differences come up, I think you can talk about them if you want, but it has to be with respect and curiosity, not with criticism and confrontation. F is for forgiveness. So if there's been past bad blood sort of spilled at your Thanksgiving meals, try to put in the past and forget it without even talking about the details. U is for unity, and L, no surprise, is for love. So I think if you come in with that sort of attitudes, it'll help. So I want to get back to gratitude and then ask you if you have any examples from the past you'd like to share, good or bad, specific worries for the future. But for gratitude, some families will do gratitude activities. So one of them might be what's called gratitude grand rounds. And that means you go around the table, like we could do this here, you go around, and each person voluntarily shouldn't be forced, voluntarily says something they're grateful about. And you keep doing that until people are sort of tired of talking and giving those. Or you could write things on paper and put up a gratitude tree, and you could actually do that before you come to the meal. So, there's various activities you can do to also make it, a nice, pleasant, moving time together. So those are some of my initial thoughts. I didn't want to take too long because I think it's interesting to talk about people's experiences, and we can do that now live and online. So hello to all the people online who I can't see, but let's take a little time, see if there's any responses, questions, and so forth from either direction, or anything you want me to talk about more. Uh-oh, my wife.
I liked your idea about the cheerful. That even before Thanksgiving, you emailed us. We're going to be spending our Thanksgiving meal being cheerful, and then write it all out. So everybody comes with that kind of a viewpoint in mind.
Yeah, that's right. That can be done too, this is how we hope we can get together, not come across too heavy.
Yeah.
Write down gratefulness stuff beforehand and, sort of get in the mood and head things off. God, my family. So here's my daughter.
So my dad helped me out just last week, actually. I'm going to Dallas to visit family, and I'm very nervous about it. And one of my family members reached out to me via text, asked me some questions that I was like, very invasive, and like, I'm not going to talk about this during my trip. And my dad helped me. I said, I want to write her back, and I want to, just get things settled before you get there. So he helped me do that, and it did. She responded to me saying, okay, I'll follow your lead. Thanks for letting me know. And hopefully we'll see if that happens, but I'm optimistic that it will. So thanks, Dad.
You're welcome. So there was an issue there of kind of intrusiveness, asking too much, maybe out of love, maybe not out of love, but it was an uncomfortable kind of question. And so I felt it was better to try to put that off, but do it in a nice, loving way. This is how our get together can work the best. And maybe there's another time her question could be answered. Thank you, Stacy.
I think you're going to have to repeat the question.
Oh, okay, you got it. That's right. So hold on one second. So the last example, real quick, was a family member. Stacy's going to Dallas for a family get together with the other side of the family. So the question was, why is someone not coming in the family? What's going on with that someone? That seemed too intrusive. So.
Yeah, very much. I have a couple of things to say. Talk about gratitude and anxiety after the other things. The first thing I want to say is my disillusion that nobody knows whether the Pilgrims actually ate turkey. That was from a recipe that was published many years later, The second thing is I've worked among American Indians, Native Americans out west, and they have a problem with the Bible because they look at those 7 tribes that were driven out of Canaan, and they can sort of identify with them and say, because this idea of manifest destiny that the white man had the sanction to go ahead and drive other tribes out. So they see that analogy, and that bothers them a little bit. I got to talk, had some discussion.
Hear the question, hear the question.
No.
Gratitude issue for me is number one, gratitude for my grandfather for coming to America from Eastern Europe, and the second gratitude is for my wife who puts up with my moods and my fixations, and what my anxiety is is for my wife who's with my sister and husband are coming to visit us for Thanksgiving, and I know my wife is really anxious about where they're going to sleep, whether it's cold, and what kind of food we get, the right kind of food, and this one's sort of gluten problem and stuff like that. And, so anyway, and I don't know how to help cope with that. And that's it.
Yeah. Thank you. There was there was a bunch of comments, and again, this is going to tax my memory. In the old days, I could just blurt it out, but not now. So the end was gratitude about one of your family members coming to the United States, gratitude for your wife, anxiety about your wife's sister coming for Thanksgiving meal and how that's going to go. Turkey may not have been served in the original Thanksgiving, I think you said at the beginning. And then, again, a very interesting part to me is about Native Americans and the idea that maybe in their view of our Torah, that the idea of 10 lost tribes is of interest to them. And, one of the reasons I brought them up is it just struck me that there was a lot of parallels with our history. Even those long marches, when I read and heard about those, it was like I was getting images from the end of World War II and the Jews being marched, by the Germans. There's actually about the same number of Native Americans in the country as Jews, maybe about 5 million or so of each, depending on how you count them. And it was kind of weird to feel some of these potential connections, which I guess is another reason I brought it up as a social justice kind of issue. So I think I got most of it right.
Yeah, well, it's the identification that there were 7 tribes that were nations were moved out of Canaan to make room for the Jews, the Hebrews, and they see that this gave some justification to the white men moving the Indians out of their places into lesser lands. And that sort of just, it bothers them a little bit. I didn't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, I think I didn't get that, but so you were saying it was used as a justification to take the Indians out of land because that happened in,
Is there a microphone? We can't hear it. The audio, is that you? Did you write that? No.
Okay, oh God, I got it.
Okay, so this was more of a comment than it really was a question, but it seems to me that when it comes to gratitude, that oftentimes my thoughts are fleeting, and I might have a thought of gratitude for a beautiful day or relative excellent health or something like that. But what you've presented is opportunities for gratitude in a more contemplative way, in a more comprehensive way. And I think that as an institution, Thanksgiving provides that opportunity. I also think our congregation provides that opportunity where you can actually sit and be more retrospective and contemplative and really think through the number of things that you really have to be grateful for. And I think I also hearken to things that Rabbi Ike have said over the years, where he talks about taking each day as it comes and finding reasons to be grateful.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. You said it probably better than I did in my rambling ways. That you're just right on. So
Rick, leave the microphone there, Linda, go up. Want me to go up? Yeah, please.
yeah, that was just beautiful.
If you have a question, you're gonna go up. Otherwise, I have 40 people going.
Gratitude journals are another thing. Lots of people write a gratitude thing once a day, every day.
I want to thank you, first of all. I think it was a wonderful presentation, meant a lot to me, so thank you. My question is, what happens when you are in a blended family and the family doesn't really think the same way you do on any issue? How do you handle it in that respect?
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned blended families as one of the examples of making things particularly difficult, but potentially, and they can, because you are coming from different perspectives. There's often unresolved conflicts between the two, anger and so forth. And probably there too, I would try to keep things on the positive side, like being curious about their points of view, even if it's different. It's like wanting them to teach you something you don't know, and even if you disagree with it. So it's the curiosity, the respect, trying not to get into old conflictual issues if possible. But even there, if it happens anyways, to try to diffuse the anger part and to try to reframe it positively, so that people feel comfortable. There too, some precautions before you all meet, and how the meal we hope is going to be run, can help diffuse potential problems. So those are kind of things I would think about. But yeah, that's really common. It's actually, and you could say the blessing part about that you are getting together rather than meeting separately. So that in itself is a real positive, because those connections are important, obviously, for a variety of reasons.
All right, we have somebody on Zoom. All right, Hubie, I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is, I like this, the synonym cheerfulness. Can you write that down so we can have a record of it?
Can we send it in?
Yes,
sometime?
I'll get it. Wait, is this it? Where's your written?
I'm finding it.
We'll find it. We'll get it to you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
if you could read my handwriting.
We'll see if we can. I'm sitting next to your handwriting expert.
No,
though.
she can't read it either.
All right.
Where's my secretary?
So I have a question for you, and something that I've been guilty with. When we run programs here, I realize that we're nonpartisan, and I find it at least easier to hold my tongue. And I got into something last week when someone said they liked a candidate, and I didn't know if they were kidding, and I was shocked, and I said something I shouldn't have. I said something I shouldn't have actually when Jim Kenny was on, like, so one, it's like the elephant in the room, politics, whether you're at the ONAG, on adult enrichment, or at Thanksgiving. So how do you de-escalate that situation?
Yeah, so, sort of the same principle. You sort of welcome that the person said it, even though you don't like it, and you want to be more curious about what's behind that. I think you all are probably even more slanted toward liberal side than our synagogue in Milwaukee, but we're pretty slanted toward Democrats, liberal, but our rabbi, I think, estimates we probably have 20% of Republicans in our synagogue. They never talk up. We never hear from them. We have some opportunities for that, although they're not designated as such. But I think they feel ignored, criticized. There's enough other things they love that they stay in the synagogue, right? But I think, so what we're thinking about doing now is trying to choose people that we think come from a spectrum politically and have some groups to talk about stuff. There's a whole process of that in the country, best run by Better Angels, if you've heard of that group. So around the country, they try to bring together Democrats and Republicans and talk about issues that they have different opinions on and try to keep, again, everything positive and respectful. And so we're thinking of doing that at our synagogue because we haven't found an easy way to get that minority point of view, which I think is really important. Because number one, we don't learn from each other if we don't discuss with people who are different. And if it ends up to be conflictual, when you confront somebody with a different point of view, usually that just intensifies their point of view. It doesn't make things better, it makes things worse because confirmation bias comes into play, that they don't want to lose their way of thinking. And so they just grab onto it stronger. So it's no way to change people's mind, which is probably what we'd like to do sometimes, but it's not easy to change people's mind, and especially when we have all these conspiracy theories out there. More questions here? Yeah.
Well, first, Vanessa, I want to know what you said. I was hoping you were going to tell
afterwards.
Watch it.
I love the cheerful, and my concern is if people only use it one day out of the year, Thanksgiving, because really it's the antidote to a lot of things for our whole lives, and we could be practicing it whether we're here in a group today or for a birthday or b'nai mitzvah, anxiety disorder. We can use it at a lot of different times. So my concern is people who only try to use principles like that once a year, or maybe they do it at Christmas, whatever, they don't really integrate it into themselves. And I think it needs to be a practice over a long period of time. And then it's a lot easier to put it into practice at like Thanksgiving or whatever holiday. So I think these are things that all of us should be constantly working on. One of the things, I'm new to the temple, is this temple gives so many opportunities from the Musar class, which I'm learning a lot from, to groups like this and different programming, gives us the opportunity to constantly be thinking and reflecting things like gratitude and so forth. So that's one of the things that really appealed to me. Just as a personal thing, what I did about 2 years ago at the beginning of COVID, in terms of gratitude for myself, I did it a little bit differently. I decided I was going to go 365 days, and each day I was going to write down the name of a person that I was grateful for, and then think about them for a minute or a couple minutes that day. And what I found was it was easy the first half of the year, right? Friends, family, teachers, but kind of the easy, low-lying fruit. But the second half of the year, because I don't really have that many friends anyways, was a lot harder. And then I was going to people who I literally met once in my life, but had some kind of meaningful interaction or conversation. I even remember one day I'd given $1, to a homeless person that was at the intersection. And I remember putting him down because what it accomplished for me, or what the difference it made in my life. So it got a lot harder the second half of the year, but through that year, it really rewired my brain, because now I always think that way, and I'm always looking for that type of thing, for things I'm grateful for. And believe me, I wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
So anyways, the bottom line is what I'm saying is I think it's a long-term process. And my concern is if people only do it one day a year or 2 days out of the year, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and they think they've accomplished something, well, they have to a degree, but probably not doing as much work as they need to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was beautiful. And it looks like Macomb Salal Lakeside is lucky to have you. So I really appreciate that. So he emphasized, if you didn't get it, trying to maintain and use gratitude all the time, not just on Thanksgiving. It's just like, okay, we'll do our duty and be nice on Thanksgiving, but what about the rest of the year? What I loved about your daily remembrance in the calendar about people who you felt grateful to is probably at the end, if I'd gotten to the spot you did and there were days left, I would have started putting down my enemies. I had lots of enemies, but as my wife knows. So we learn from our enemies too, right? So in essence, we could probably put down everybody that we remember and run across for what they contributed to our life in a positive way, even though it might have been bad at the time.
I like it.
Thank you.
Go in front of the screen
Okay.
and use the microphone so we can.
Oh, well, okay. Well, there we go. How's that? Wait, now we're, featured in 12 ways. It wasn't worth it. I hate to tell you. It's I guess just sort of at this point, more of an observation that reinforces this idea of gratitude. And many of you hopefully may remember Carl Wilkins, who was here actually the last speaker before COVID shut us down so badly a couple of years ago. And one of the things that Carl's very big on this kind of stuff with gratitude and positive thinking and so on. And the way he practices it is once every day you think of not necessarily a individual, but something you are grateful for. And if you do meetings and sessions with Carl, which I still do on a very regular basis, most of the sessions, he will start off, the first thing he'll do is one thing you're grateful for from today. And it's, and just plays that out that way. So how do you do it? Bob is right. You don't do it once a year. That doesn't work. And it takes practice and doing it on a regular basis, just once a day makes a big difference. So.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation too about another way to do that. There were kids here earlier, and some people will do that with their kids before they go to sleep. They'll ask the kids for, what are you grateful for about what happened today? And when they first start that out, they find it's difficult. The kids don't want to do it. They don't know what it means, but gradually they get into it. And then if the parents forget, they remind them, it's time for us to talk about our gratitudes, is what they term it. So everybody's here's children is probably too old to do this, but grandkids and so forth. So it's really important to pass that kind of style and habit onto the next generations.
So thanks so much, Dr. Moffic, for a wonderful presentation. So my question, is there any research or study that's been done on the impact of social media on Thanksgiving and holiday stress? Or again, as I look at our Thanksgiving weekend, the stores open earlier and earlier for the next day for Black Friday. There's new things, Friendsgiving, and more things to celebrate, more sort of demands on our time. So is there any sort of clinical research that's been done over the past 10 years where this sort of stress levels seem to be escalating? Would love to hear, or just your feelings if there hasn't been research.
Yeah, social media affects most everything, right? Yeah, I haven't run across clear research about negative effects of social media on, say, Thanksgiving, but on lots of other stuff, ranging from relationships to changing people's brains and how they work and so forth, and the conspiracy theories. I think certainly there is a lot of sales stuff that goes on online. That's why maybe more is bought offline now than online, and the ease of doing that. But the whole presence thing is an interesting matter in terms of gratitude, and what you try to give to one another. So our gifts in general are the best way to express gratitude. And how do you pick gifts that the other person really loves, not what you want to give them? And how much is too much? And for Hanukkah, do we give presents, as my wife and I do every night? So 8 presents during Hanukkah? Are we just trying to outdo Christmas when we do that? So, I mean, online is so difficult because there's been so much positive aspects of it, just like we have everybody online now. Terrific. How could that be done before? That was a COVID blessing that came out of COVID, so we can have people online that we connect to. But it's also had lots of negative stuff, I think, especially on mental health. So if we put the question in terms of overall mental health from online stuff, it's been more harmful than beneficial. And that's really worrisome. Over these last few years, it started before COVID, but probably for the time when using iPhones came into popularity, the mental health of the country has, now politics may contribute to this too, but the mental health of the country has gone down and down and down almost each year. More depression, more anxiety, more suicidality, especially with young people, especially with young Black female girls suicide. I mean, the results are really worrisome. So how do we take care of that and maintain the good aspects of being online? So, Bill?
I'd like to go back a little bit to the discussion on politics. When I was a college student studying political science and history, and I would take public transportation, reading a book with the title Communist Manifesto. And people would look at me and move their seats away. And one woman started really ragging on me. How can I read such filth? I said, have you ever read it? I wouldn't read it. I said, well, how do you know what's in it? And the point that I made then and I'll make now is that we have the opportunity to learn, especially things that we feel the opposite of. So why do we love? Why do we not love? That's one thing I'm grateful for, that opportunity. Now, the other point I want to make is going back still further in the discussion. What I'm thankful for, America is an experiment. And I used to conduct seminars on the idea of America. What is America? There has never been an experiment like what we have here. Why did people come to America? To escape tyranny, dictatorship, kings, queens that looked at their citizenry as possessions rather than as individuals. So America, the people that created what we are now heirs to are the people that I'm really thankful for.
Thank you, Bill. As always, I want to make a brief comment about the first part of what you said about learning from one another, because it goes back to the last question about online stuff. Online was set up for you to become addicted to it one way or another. And so, they had these little, I forget what they're called, where you just press like or love or something, and that becomes addictive. And then you have, I don't use this stuff, so that's why I'm talking off the top of my head, like Apple, Spotify about music. And so they'll give you recommendations for music that they think you're going to like because you've already chosen blah, blah, blah. Now, I like the opposite. I like to listen to music that's different than what I like. So I don't like those kind of lists. I want lists that are different. And so if we get reinforced for only the things we love, no wonder we have conspiracy theories, and no wonder we can't find easy ways to learn what we don't already know, because we're pushed in the opposite direction. So I think you made a really important point there. How to get that from other people so they feel comfortable in sharing is another challenge.
We have one more person online. Marilyn, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi Moffic. I always enjoy.
I
when
think
you-
it's Dr. Moffic.
Thank you.
Although we
Dr.
can
That's all right.
elevate
I'll
him.
take it.
Thank you, Dr. Moffic, for creating Rabbi Moffic.
Well, my wife gets a large
your
part of that.
wonderful and your wonderful life. But I wanted to say that Rabbi Ike has said, and I do practice this now every day when I wake up. He says, and I'm not quoting him, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember his exact words, but the idea and the thought that I have is, this is the day the Lord hath made. Let us be glad and rejoice in it. And then I always add, and do a mitzvah. So the reaching out and I want to bring God back into the equation. I think that piggybacking on what Bob said, he's been such a wonderful addition to our synagogue and to our Musar class. And a plug for Ashley, Friday at 2:00, we study all of these traits. We study Musar, and gratitude is hakara hatov. And it's practicing thinking about the good instead of all the bad. And we have to be grateful. I always tell my children, there's more things that go right in this world than wrong. With all the terrible things that are happening, we have to focus on what we do have and what's going right. And in thinking about your talk for today, I started to sort of make a list of things that would cause stress on Thanksgiving, not personal stress, but stress in general. And so I was thinking about the triggers of stress, perhaps people worrying about overeating, people worrying about spending money and traveling, people worried about the busy stores, which I think I love that when the holidays come and the stores are, everybody's shopping. It's part of the holiday. It's part of my traditional, I know when I go there, it's going to be buzzing, and it's different than other times. It's a separation of the other times when I shop, and I enjoy that. I just go with the time, not rushing, so that I can enjoy even that experience. And then there's your children grow up and they move to different places, and there's family separation, and you have to be loving enough to give the other machatunim a chance to have your grandchildren. You have to accept that, and there's so many things. And then what about the students? They're having to come back, their academics. What about, their stress because they have to, they have work that has to be done, and they have to get on a flight or get in a car. And so this is such a good topic because it does affect us in so many ways. And as Bob says, if you do study Musar, and it's like anything else, you prepare yourself for these events. It's not such a shock when something comes up because you've already been mindful and studied it. So come to our Musar class on Fridays at 2 with Ashley Plotnick.
Thank you. Thank you, Marilyn. Did people hear most of that?
Come to the Musar class, 2:00. If you need the link, see me. I know, yes.
But, she made another comment that you were a genius for picking up this topic.
Yeah.
Yes, really. But it reminds me of our human tendency, which also makes it hard to do what people have been advocating at the end of this program. Our brains are hardwired to respond to danger, perceived danger, risk, and then we pay attention. We're not hardwired as much to pay attention to the good things. And that may be why gratitude, to maintain a sense of gratitude every day, you have to make a structure, have some way to remind yourself to do it, because it's not natural. And we're probably all going to get stresses that feel like a risk to rile us up every day. But to keep your mind on the good stuff and be appreciative, it's harder. Our human brain doesn't react as strong to that. So it's work to do the opposite.
I want to say thank you. It's good to see you. I do have one last question, actually, which is, I think more than anything that I'm hearing this year from people is not so much about the politics, actually. Maybe that speaks to the homogeneity of the community. But I'm hearing from a lot of people who have lost their Thanksgiving tradition over the last few years. The death of a loved one, the mom who made Thanksgiving every year, or the husband who made Thanksgiving every year, or all those kinds of things. And I'm wondering if you have some advice for people who now have to kind of recreate their holiday anew. Yeah.
Yes. So Rabbi, I brought up, in essence, I think, what about how things have changed during COVID, and often for the bad? Somebody died, so forth, and now we're getting together again. So in a way, it can't be the way it used to be. And that's the paradox of COVID time. We've all lost stuff one way or another. We've lost things, jobs sometimes, people dying, people getting sick, the horrible parts of COVID, right? And then I think the good part is, for some people, there were good things that happened during COVID. They were brought closer together, become appreciative for the important things of life. So we've got both of those aspects coming into Thanksgiving. And I think you're so right to bring up, maybe some space and time needs to be put into not only designing the time together in Thanksgiving to include what's changed for good and bad, and kind of have a ritual in a way for that. I think it's easy to put that stuff aside because some of it's so painful emotionally and stuff. So to make room and even plan that it can be addressed in a safe, comfortable way. So I very much appreciate your bringing that up. Very important.
It's a wonderful lesson for people.
Yes, yes.
I want to thank Dr. Moffic. It's great to see everybody online. As always, I have a few announcements. This afternoon is our interfaith service at 3 p.m. So those of you who are online, maybe you can come in. If you can't come in, it will be on the streaming section. So you go to mymacomb.org, worship streaming. And next week, we don't have any classes, but next Friday is our birthday and anniversary blessings. So if you have birthday or anniversary blessings in November, or if you missed it in October, come on down, 6:30 start time for that service. And then on December 4th, we have, and that'll be streaming too for you people on Zoom, it's Soul Farm, and that's going to start at 1 p.m.
Soul Farm and Sari.
And Sari, and I happen to know the Sari. Anyway, but this is a fundraiser for Magen David Dome, and we have a big picture of an ambulance in our lobby and in our lounge, and we're about halfway to our fundraising goal. 75 years in Israel, so $75 per family would be fantastic. And if you have anything, if you have any questions, you know where to find me. It looks like you get a lot of thank yous in the chat. So we're so glad that you're here. We're glad everybody's here. We're glad everybody's on Zoom. You know where to get a hold of me. So, and we're off next Sunday. I have a big brunch at my house. I have my own Thanksgiving anxieties of all my family coming in. Okay, it's good to see everybody.